Now, who will and who won't be attending the King's coronation has been the topic of everyone's conversation this week. But when it comes to this momentous occasion of pomp and ceremony, there's something else that I find to be much more concerning. Church sources say the monarch has been told his desire for a diverse ceremony, including participation by non-Christians, risks clashing with centuries-old canon law, which bars Muslim, Hindu, Jewish and other faith leaders from reading out prayers during the service. So is the king right to introduce multi-faith elements to his more modernist and inclusive coronation service? Or is he watering down the faith he is sworn to defend? This all brings us to this week's duel, and to join me on the duel this week are my duelist's sidekick, Emma Webb, and this week's nemesis, formerly Britain's longest-serving political editor, Nigel Nelson. Thank you both so much for joining me this week. I'm going to start with Nigel, and I want to get your take on this. Should the king be watering down our faith in this coronation service in order to be more inclusive and diverse?
He just can't do it. This is a matter for the next coronation rather than this one. So because he is the head of state and the church and state are intertwined, he must, as head of the Church of England, go through a Church of England service. Now, that doesn't mean you don't include other religions, or even none, but the only way I can see you can do that is certainly not in the ceremony. You might, for instance, be able to find an acceptable form of words to everyone, which is an oath of loyalty to the king, a prayer perhaps, and put it on the service sheet that the other religions could sign. I don't know how the humanists would quite cope with that, but you could do something like that. What you can't do is change the actual ceremony, because that is part of our constitution.
I tend to agree with you. I'm surprised, Nigel, but thank you. Emma?
Yeah, amen to that.
Do we have... Is King Charles trying to be an absolute monarch here? Is he trying to override centuries-old laws, canon laws?
Well, it's interesting that, ironically, he seems to be doing something that's very much in the tradition of the King Charleses. Right. I think he's trying to, or at least as far as we know from what has come out in the press, he seems to be, in characteristic fashion, trying to assert his own character on the coronation. And I think that a lot of people who have defended him have said it's his right to do so. How dare you comment on this? You're not in the royal family. You have no sort of rights over how this should be done. And I don't think that's true at all. And I think I agree with you completely. This is a constitutional matter. I think that we should really be very staunch in standing by canon law on this and really fighting back against the accusation, the argument that to be a Christian country, to acknowledge the roots of our Christian institutions, the roots of our law within Christianity, the fact that Christianity and our Christian culture and tradition and history is responsible for the liberties that we enjoy today. I think that we should be very staunch in defending that and making it very clear that actually, like I said, a lot of the liberties that we enjoy today are a result of that Christian heritage, and therefore it's not to the exclusion of people of other faiths or tolerance of people who have different beliefs. Yes, they can be involved in the coronation in some way, but to involve them in the ceremony in contradiction to canon law would simply be wrong. And I also think that it would be, seriously misled. I think it would have knock-on effects for, it would send a message to other institutions. And we do live in this kind of culture of repudiation, as Roger Scruton called it, where we're constantly denigrating our own history and traditions. And I think King Charles should know better than that. He's a very well-read man, and he should be standing up for the traditions of the coronation, I think, as his mother would have wanted.
Well, he did float the idea of being defender of faith. I mean, that was one of his original ideas. He's gone back on that now. But that, again, it wasn't possible. I mean, I think that when it comes down to Christian traditions that Emma was talking about there is a slight problem with this with the rest of the world, because what we've done is that all the major institutions set up by the West, from the United Nations to NATO to any other major kind of international institutions, have been based on Christian values. That's all very well, but that's making an assumption the Christian values are the right ones and values in the rest of the world aren't, but the rest of the world must follow us.
Yes. That's right.
You mean, yes, you agree, that's what should happen?
Yes.
But you don't think that is actually fairly disrupting to international relations?
No, because to relate with other nations, you don't have to take on board their values. You have to find a common ground. And I think the problem here is that we're addressing multiculturalism, aren't we? We're saying we are a multicultural society. How do we show that in the ceremony of coronating our new king? And in fact, I don't think we need to. I think the reason we're multicultural is because people of other faiths and cultures want to come and live in England because they like our culture and they like our values. So therefore, we should shine forward with our values and say, this is what it means to be a Christian country. This is a Christian ceremony, a Christian service. You can take it on board, you can admire it, you can be a part of it, but you can't change it.
But we actually use Christianity as an excuse to colonize the rest of the world on the basis that...
That's a mystery.
Well, hang on the basis that Christianity was undoubtedly a good thing.
It is, yes.
I think it is undoubtedly a good thing, but other people may not think that. Now, we've changed that round, so we export democracy to go and invade Islamic countries and say, oh, what you must have now is democracy. And it's a kind of Western form of democracy. Why are we so certain that these things are absolutely right?
Do you agree with Nigel that we should stop colonising countries in favour of democracy and start colonising in favour of Christianity again?
That turned it round.
Yeah, wow, spicy, Calvin. I think that there's this prevailing idea that neutrality is possible, that institutions, countries, international institutions can in some way be neutral. And actually, liberalism and liberal democracy, for a long time, presumed its own neutrality. And that was one of the ways in which it justified spreading itself around the world. So I think we need to be honest with ourselves that institutions, countries, cultures, are not ahistorical, neutral things that exist outside of time and culture and tradition, but actually are rooted in particular histories, and other countries are entitled to that themselves. There's nothing wrong or exclusionary about acknowledging the Christian roots of this country and treasuring that because we see the good that it has done in the world, as well as recognising that sometimes these things get distorted and get used for bad.
But it's insisting our morality is better than theirs.
Absolutely.
Some morality is better than what other people assert morality to be.
Not all things are equal. Not all cultures are equal. Not all beliefs are equal. But I love it when the left and the right come to a common ground. I'm doing a poll on Twitter to find out what you guys think about this as well. Is the king right to introduce multi-faith prayers to his more modernist and inclusive coronation service, or should it remain a Christian service? There are two options there for you to vote on throughout the show, and the poll is open until 7:40 p.m, so you've still got plenty of time to cast your vote. I'll bring you the results before the end of the programme.